Princess Lyria stood alone on the high balcony of her silver palace. The twin moons of her planet, Virelia, hung in the sky, casting soft light over the cold stone floors. She wore a long violet gown that shimmered like stars, but her eyes held only sadness. Long ago, Virelians were a proud and noble race. Their royalty were strong, beautiful, and always gave birth to heirs who led the empire. But Lyria was different. She could not have children. Doctors had confirmed it when she was 16. Her womb was barren, and no Virelian technology could fix it. From that day, everything changed. Once, her name had brought joy and honor. Now, people whispered behind her back. Nobles avoided her at court. Princes from other worlds who once wanted to marry her now refused. No heir meant no future, they said, but Lyria did not cry anymore. She had cried enough. Now she stood tall, quiet, and proud. Even if the world forgot her, she would not forget who she was. Captain Jack Harris arrived on Virelia during the season of peace. A year ago, the galaxy had suffered a terrible war between human forces and several alien factions. Many planets were burned, cities lost. Now, Earth sent peacekeepers to rebuild trust. Jack was a soldier, but not just any soldier. He had fought on the front lines, saved lives, and earned medals. He had scars, too, on his body and in his heart. He had lost friends. He had seen betrayal and blood. But he still believed in something better. When he landed on Virelia, he was assigned to the Royal Guard as a guest of honor. Earth and Virelia were new allies, and the humans wanted to show respect. Jack noticed the princess the first day. She was standing at the far end of the great hall, quiet and alone, while others danced and laughed. Her eyes were deep, like oceans, filled with pain. He asked a fellow officer, "Who's she?" The officer frowned. "That's Princess Lyria. She's the one who can't bear children." Jack looked again. "So?" The officer shrugged. "In this culture it matters. A princess must have heirs. No one will marry her. She's just a symbol now. A sad one." Jack didn't like those words. Later that evening, while others celebrated, Jack walked through the royal gardens. The air was warm, filled with the smell of silver flowers. And there, sitting near a glowing tree, was the princess. "Mind if I sit?" Jack asked. She looked up, surprised. "You're the human soldier," he smiled. "And you're the lonely princess." Lyria raised an eyebrow. "You're bold." "Not bold. Honest." She tilted her head. "No one sits with me." "Well, maybe they're fools," Jack said, sitting down beside her. "They're missing good company." She looked at him closely, as if trying to read his soul. "You're not like the others." "Neither are you," he replied. Over the next few weeks, Jack visited her often, sometimes in the gardens, sometimes in the library, sometimes on the balcony where she watched the moons. They talked about everything: her world, his battles, the stars, music, and life. Lyria laughed for the first time in years. Jack listened without judgment. He didn't treat her like a cursed, royal, or a broken thing. He treated her like a person. She told him stories from her childhood, how she once wanted to be a great queen, a warrior queen, how she used to fly starships before her condition made the court lock her away. "I am useless to them now," she said one evening. Jack leaned forward. "You are not useless. You're wise, kind, and strong." She shook her head. "But I cannot give an heir. My people care about bloodlines." "Then your people need to change," Jack replied. One afternoon, during a court gathering, nobles from across the stars gathered. Alien princes showed off their power. Rich ladies gossiped about future marriages. Lyria stood near the edge of the hall, watching quietly as always. Jack entered, dressed in his clean military uniform. He walked straight to her and offered his hand. "Dance with me." The whole hall fell silent. Lyria's eyes widened. "Are you mad?" "Maybe," Jack said with a grin. "But I think I'd rather dance with the bravest woman in the room than sit with cowards." She took his hand. Gasps filled the air. Nobles whispered. Some were angry, some were shocked. But Jack and Lyria danced. It was a slow, quiet dance. No music needed. Just two souls moving together while the galaxy watched. After the dance, Jack spoke loudly. "I wish to court Princess Lyria. I don't care if she can bear children. I care about her heart." The king and queen were silent. The nobles were stunned. Jack looked at them all. "On Earth, we judge by courage, not just by blood, and I see more courage in this princess than in all your titles and crowns." Lyria stood beside him, trembling. "Do you know what this means?" "Yes," Jack said. "It means I'm not afraid. Are you?" She smiled. "Not anymore." Later that night, in her private chamber, Lyria stood before the stars. "I don't understand you, Jack. You're from a different world." "You could have anyone." Jack stepped beside her. "But I want someone who understands pain and still chooses love," she whispered. "I was told no one would ever choose me." Jack took her hand gently. Then they were wrong. The whole palace buzzed with whispers the next morning. A human soldier had asked to court Princess Lyria, the same Lyria whom nobles had ignored for years, the same princess everyone had called barren, useless, and unfit for marriage. Now, the story was different. Servants talked in the halls. Nobles sent quiet messages to each other. Some were curious, others were angry, a few were afraid. And in the center of it all, Lyria sat quietly in her private garden, her hands folded in her lap, thinking of Captain Jack Harris. She wasn't sure what surprised her more, the courage in his voice at the court, or the warmth she felt inside her heart when he held her hand. Jack was called to speak with the royal council that afternoon. He stood tall in front of 12 Varelian elders. They wore long silver robes, their faces calm but cold. Behind them sat King Varen, Lyria's father. He did not smile. The oldest elder leaned forward. "Captain Jack Harris, do you understand what you have done?" Jack nodded. "Yes, I've made my intentions clear." "Do you know who she is?" Another elder asked. "She is not just a woman, she is the future of our name." "She is more than that," Jack replied. "She is a person, a brave one, and I respect her." A few elders frowned. One scoffed. "You humans have strange ideas about honor." She stayed calm. "Maybe. But I believe love should be earned through truth, not bloodlines." King Varen finally spoke. "Why do you want my daughter, soldier? What do you hope to gain?" Jack looked him in the eye. "Nothing. I only hope to give. I offer loyalty, strength, and a future where she is not alone." The room went silent. King Varen nodded slowly. "We will watch. If you fail her, there will be consequences." For the next few days, Jack spent more time with Lyria. They walked through the quiet gardens, visited old temples, and even rode sky beasts together across the glowing hills of Virelia. Lyria was different now. She smiled more. She asked questions. She laughed at Jack's Earth stories. He told her about growing up in New Arizona, fighting off bandits during the colony years. He told her about the stars, the oceans, and how Earth didn't care if a queen had a child, only if she had courage. "No one ever said those things to me," Lyria whispered one evening. "They should have," Jack said softly. But not everyone was happy. Lord Tharn, a rich and powerful noble, had once tried to claim Lyria's hand, before her condition was known. He felt insulted now. He spoke to the queen in secret. "This human will ruin our bloodlines. If he marries her, your house will fall." Others joined him. "A childless union is shameful. We need heirs." But Queen Celira, Lyria's mother, stayed quiet. She watched her daughter smile for the first time in years. She saw how Jack looked at her, not with pity, but with love. Deep down, the queen felt torn. She loved her daughter, but feared change. Lyria and Jack often trained together. In the royal courtyard, Lyria had once been a strong fighter, but court life and sorrow had weakened her. Jack offered to help. He showed her simple human combat moves. They sparred every morning, sweat and laughter filling the air. One day, Lyria knocked Jack flat on the ground. He groaned, rubbing his ribs. "Ow, that's not fair. You're faster. Now." She smiled and offered her hand. "Told you I wasn't useless." He took her hand, grinning. "You're dangerous." "I like that." They sat under the shade, breathing hard. Jack looked at her seriously. "I've seen many worlds, Lyria. I've seen war, loss, and people broken by it. But you kept your heart alive." She looked at him, her voice soft. "I thought I was broken." "You were never broken," he said. "You were just waiting for someone to see you." That evening, the palace hosted a cultural feast. Music from many star systems played. Lights danced in the air. Lyria wore a simple dress, not royal robes. Jack wore his human uniform. They sat together, not at the center table, but among the people, soldiers, healers, and old workers who had served the palace for years. Many Varelians stared, some with disgust, but others, especially the young, watched with wonder. A child approached Lyria shyly. "Princess?" she smiled. "Yes, little one? Are you really going to marry the human?" Lyria looked at Jack. He smiled back. She knelt down beside the girl. "Would that make you happy?" The girl nodded. "You look happy when you're with him." Lyria hugged the child. "Then yes, I will try." Later that night, in the quiet of the starlit balcony, Lyria and Jack talked again. "Do you ever regret choosing me?" she asked. Jack leaned on the railing beside her. "Not for 1 second, but I cannot give you a child," she said. Jack turned to her. "Then we build something else. We build a life, a future. Not all legacies come from blood." She blinked away tears. "You really believe that?" "I do," he said, taking her hand. "With you, I believe in many things again." But far away, deep in the council halls, Lord Tharn made a plan. "If we let this continue," he whispered to other nobles, "our bloodline traditions will die." One noble asked, "What do you suggest?" Tharn's eyes narrowed. "If the human is removed, the courtship ends. She will have no one, and she will return to silence." The others nodded slowly. The storm was coming, but Jack and Lyria didn't. No, they only had each other, and a growing bond the galaxy had never seen before. Captain Jack Harris stood at the top of the palace stairs, watching the red sun rise over the shining cities of Varelia. The sky turned gold as light spread across the domes and towers. Below, the people were waking up to a new day. But for Jack, it was the beginning of something much harder. The Royal Council had summoned him. After weeks of walking beside Princess Lyria, dancing with her, and training with her in the open court, he had finally asked the king for her hand. The king had not answered immediately. Instead, he gave Jack a task, not a simple test, not a private question, but an ancient Varelian challenge. "Prove your worth," King Varen had said. "Win our respect. Only then can you stand beside my daughter." Lyria sat across from her father in the throne chamber. Her hands were tight, in her lap. "This is not fair," she said. "You are making him fight for honor, but no one else had to." King Varen looked down from his golden throne. No one else asked to marry the royal daughter who could not give an heir. And no one else was human. Lyria stood, her voice shaking. "You're punishing him because he sees me as more than a womb," the king sighed. "I am testing him because if he is to change this world, he must face its old rules." Lyria's heart was heavy. She understood the truth in her father's words, but still, she hated them. Jack's challenge was simple in name, but deadly in practice. He had to complete the trial of 3 traditions, ancient tests once faced, by royal suitors. Each test was from a different pillar of Varelian culture: combat, wisdom, and spirit. No outsider had ever been allowed to try. Until now. Test 1. Combat. The arena was filled with nobles, warriors, and even a few curious humans. Jack stood in the center, wearing light armor and holding a long staff. Across from him stood Sir Kelvar, the most skilled Varelian duelist alive. They circled each other. The first clash was fast. Kelvar's staff slammed against Jack's side, almost knocking him down. But Jack rolled, stood, and grinned. Kelvar was strong, but Jack had fought in real wars. He dodged, countered, and used quick footwork. Kelvar aimed for power. Jack moved with strategy. Blow after blow, sweat poured from their faces. The crowd watched in silence. Then, in a surprise move, Jack dropped low, swept Kelvar's feet, and pointed his staff at the fallen warrior's neck. Gasps filled the air. Jack stepped back and offered a hand to Kelvar. The Varelian warrior took it with a small smile. "You fight with honor," he said. Jack nodded. "So do you." Test 2. Wisdom. This time, Jack sat inside a crystal room with the High Scholar Arenas. She was over 300 years old and knew every law, legend, and secret of Virelia. In front of them sat 5 boxes, each with a puzzle written in ancient symbols. Jack had to solve 3 in 1 hour. The puzzles were not about numbers or shapes. They were about Varelian values. Which law should be broken to save a child? The first puzzle asked. "None," Jack said, "but I'd still break them to save the child." Irenis smiled. The second puzzle was about truth and silence. Jack answered with a story from his Earth days, how silence in war sometimes saved lives more than speaking ever could. The final puzzle asked, "What is worth more than legacy?" Jack looked out the window, then answered softly, "Love." Irenis nodded. "You pass." Test 3. Spirit. The final challenge was held in the Hall of Echoes, a sacred place where Varelians face their fears. Jack was told to enter alone, without weapons, and face a memory from his own mind. Inside, the air grew cold. The walls pulsed with light. A strange mist wrapped around Jack as the room shifted. Suddenly, he was back on an old battlefield, Earth's Mars Colony 9, watching a young soldier bleed in his arms. Jack knelt, holding the image of his fallen friend. The friend spoke, though he was long dead. "Why did you live, Jack? Why do you deserve peace?" Jack's throat tightened. "I don't know, but I won't waste it." "Then prove it," the ghost said. "Fight for her, not because she is weak, but because the world is." The vision faded. Jack walked out of the hall, quiet but steady. The council waited. "He passed," the priest announced. The next day, the king gathered the nobles, generals, and scholars in the grand chamber. Lyria stood beside her mother, her heart racing. Jack stood before the throne, dusty and tired but calm. King Varen rose. "Captain Jack Harris, you have completed the trial of 3 traditions. You showed skill in combat, wisdom in thought, and strength in spirit," the nobles murmured. The king continued, "You are not Varelian by blood, but today you have earned the respect of our people. Then slowly he stepped down and placed a small silver emblem on Jack's chest. With this, you are now a knight of Virelia. Jack bowed deeply. Thank you, Your Majesty. Lyria stepped forward. And as for my hand in marriage? The king looked at her, then back at Jack. If that is your choice, then it is granted. A loud cheer rose from the younger nobles and guards, but not everyone clapped. Far in the shadows, Lord Tharn watched with narrow eyes. He turned to his allies. This will not last. A human knight cannot change our ways. The people may cheer now, but they will see. One day, they will beg for tradition to return. His voice was cold, his plans darker. That night, in the garden under the moonlight, Jack and Lyria sat side by side. You did it, she whispered. No, Jack said. We did it. She leaned her head on his shoulder. I never thought anyone would fight this hard for me. Jack smiled. I'd fight the whole galaxy if it meant standing beside you. They looked up at the stars. Two people from different worlds, ready to face the future together. But neither of them knew. The real test was yet to come. The sun shone brightly over the shining towers of Virelia. The royal flags waved in the wind. The streets were filled with colorful flowers, music, and people dancing. It was the week of celebration. Captain Jack Harris and Princess Lyria were to be married soon. People across the planet spoke of the upcoming wedding. Some called it a strange union. Others called it a symbol of courage and change. For the first time in many years, Lyria walked through the city without fear or shame. Children gave her flowers. Young women called her brave. Many whispered she chose love, not tradition. Jack stayed close beside her. He met Virelian merchants, soldiers, and scholars. He smiled, shook hands, and earned the trust of many. But behind the smiles, not everyone was happy. Lord Tharn stood in his private chamber, watching a hologram of the wedding preparations. This human thinks he belongs here, Tharn said bitterly. He has fooled the king, the council, and even the people. His servant, a tall alien with sharp eyes, stepped forward. What do you wish to do, my lord? Tharn's voice turned cold. We strike before the wedding. If the human dies, the alliance ends. The princess will fall back into silence, and Virelia's traditions will be saved. But the royal guards are loyal to the king, Tharn snapped. But we have others. He pointed to the map of the palace. There's a secret tunnel. Use it. Meanwhile, Jack and Lyria walked by the crystal lake near the palace gardens. The water sparkled under the soft blue sky. Silver birds flew above, singing gentle songs. Lyria sat under a blossom tree and looked at Jack. Do you ever miss Earth? Jack smiled. Sometimes. I miss the mountains. I miss real coffee. She laughed. I've never tasted coffee. I'll make it for you one day, he said. Then his voice became softer. I don't miss the wars or the pain, but I do miss the stars I looked up to when I was alone. Before I met you. Lyria touched his hand gently. You're not alone now. That evening, the queen met her daughter in the royal chambers. She carried an old box wrapped in silver cloth. This belonged to my grandmother, the queen said. She was strong like you. She chose her own path. Wore this at her wedding. Now it's yours. Lyria opened the box. Inside was a glowing, white veil made from sky silk, a rare fabric that shimmered like morning light. Tears filled Lyria's eyes. Thank you, mother. The queen held her hand. You've made me proud, Lyria. Not for changing our world, but for being true to your heart. That night, while everyone slept, shadows moved under the palace. Lord Tharn's men entered through the secret tunnel. They carried silent weapons and moved like ghosts. Their mission: kill the human before the wedding. They crept toward Jack's room, passing guards, avoiding cameras. One of them whispered, "He must not survive the night." But someone had already warned Jack. Earlier that day, a servant boy, one of the kitchen helpers, had overheard Tharn's men talking. He ran straight to the guards and told them everything. Captain Miro, a loyal Varelian warrior and a close friend of Jack, acted fast. He placed hidden guards around Jack's room. When the attackers broke in, they were met with bright lights and drawn weapons. Jack woke up at the sound of fighting. He rolled out of bed, grabbed a staff, and rushed into the hall. Swords clashed, energy blasts flew. One guard fell, but the rest held strong. Jack faced one of the attackers, dodged a blade, and knocked him out with a hard strike. "Protect the princess!" he shouted. But Lyria was already awake. She stood in her chamber, holding a ceremonial spear from her wall. When a masked attacker burst in, she didn't run. She fought. The man swung at her, but she blocked, spun, and struck him in the chest. He dropped his blade. Another man came from behind. Jack appeared just in time, tackled him, and threw him against the wall. Lyria looked at Jack, breathing hard. "You okay?" Jack smiled. "You're asking me? You just took out a killer." She grinned. "I told you I wasn't weak." By morning, the attackers were captured and questioned. They confessed quickly under truth rays. All had been paid by Lord Tharn. The king summoned Tharn to the throne room. The nobles stood around, silent and tense. King Varen's voice thundered. "You dared attack my family. You tried to kill my daughter's future. What do you say in your defense?" Tharn stood tall, unashamed. "I did what was right. This human is a danger to our traditions. You let emotions blind you." Lyria stepped forward. Her voice was calm but strong. "Traditions, that's silence. People are not worth saving. You feared change, but change has already come." The king raised his hand. "You will be exiled, Tharn. Your name will be erased from our history." Gasps filled the hall. Tharn was taken away. The day of the wedding finally came. The palace was decorated with white stars and purple banners. Flowers filled the air with sweet perfume. People from many planets arrived to witness the event. Lyria walked down the long crystal path wearing the sky silk veil. Her steps were slow, proud, and full of grace. Jack stood at the end of the path, waiting, his eyes never leaving her. When she reached him, they held hands. The priest spoke the sacred words in both Varelian and English. "Do you choose each other? Not for power, not for heirs, but for heart and soul?" "I do," Lyria said. "I do," Jack replied. The priest smiled. "Then before the stars and the people, I bind you as one." Cheers exploded across the palace. Jack kissed her gently. Lyria smiled brighter than the twin suns. Later that night, under the glowing trees, they sat together in silence. Jack whispered, "You're not just a princess now." She looked at him. "What am I?" "A queen in my heart," he said. "And maybe one day, the galaxies." Lyria leaned her head on his shoulder. "With you beside me, I believe it. But far beyond the stars, in a dark corner of the galaxy, a signal was sent. An enemy had watched the wedding, and they did not like what they saw. Change was coming, and they were ready to stop it. The wedding of Captain Jack Harris and Princess Lyria became the most talked-about event across Varelia and beyond. Many planets sent messages of peace. Some leaders were surprised, some were confused, but many were inspired. A human soldier had married a princess who could not have children, and no war followed. Only hope. Across the galaxy, common people cheered. They saw the love between Jack and Lyria and believed in something new, a future where courage mattered more than blood. But not everyone celebrated. Far beyond the star system of Varelia, in the cold dark of space, an ancient empire stirred. The Zarkor Dominion, a cruel race of conquerors, watched the new alliance between Earth and Virelia with growing fear. The Dominion believed in strength, tradition, and bloodlines. To them, Lyria's marriage was a threat. "This union spreads weakness," said Lord Zenth, the Dominion's war leader. "If other worlds follow this path, our empire's control will weaken." He pointed at the hologram of Jack and Lyria standing together. "This human must fall. The princess must be destroyed. Virelia must learn fear." And so, they sent their fleet. Back on Virelia, days after the wedding, Lyria and Jack had begun their new life. They lived in a smaller royal tower, away from the court among the people. They spent mornings visiting schools, helping farmers, and listening to young voices. Lyria smiled more now. She laughed. Her people loved her again, but this time, for who she truly was. Jack trained new peacekeepers. He shared Earth's tactics, taught defense, and built trust between human and Virelian guards. One evening, as they watched the stars from their balcony, Lyria said, "This world feels different now." Jack nodded. "Because you changed it." "No," she said softly. "We changed it together. But peace never lasts forever." That night, the royal sensors picked up strange signals in space. Unmarked ships, fast, silent. General Ryan called the king. "Your Majesty, the Zarkor fleet is entering our system." The king stood up. "How many?" "Dozens of warships. Maybe more." The palace went on full alert. Jack rushed into the war room where generals and officers shouted commands. He looked at the star map. "They're heading straight for the capital." Lyria followed close behind him. "Why would the Zarkor—" "Come now." Jack stared at the screen. "Because they fear what we've built. You and me." The king entered the room. "Captain Harris, you know war. What would you do?" Jack turned, his voice firm. "Fight smart. Evacuate the outer villages. Prepare defense towers, and we hold the palace no matter what." The king nodded. "Then lead us." The next day, the sky turned dark. Zarkor ships broke through the clouds. Their engines roared like thunder. Energy blasts rained down on the fields and outer defenses. But Virelia was ready. Jack stood on the main wall, directing human and Virelian troops together. Cannons fired back. Fighters flew overhead. "Hold your line!" Jack shouted. "Protect the people!" Lyria worked inside the palace, helping the injured. She gave orders, carried supplies, and even picked up a fallen guard's sword when needed. She was no longer just a princess. She was a leader. The battle lasted all day and into the night. Jack's uniform was torn, his arm bruised, but he didn't stop. He fought beside his men, never hiding behind titles. When one of the towers fell, Jack and a small team rushed in and reactivated the shield systems just in time. Lyria saw him return, limping but alive, and hugged him tightly. "You're crazy!" He grinned. "You married me." She laughed through tears. That might have been the craziest thing of all. Suddenly, a massive explosion rocked the palace. The west wall was breached. Zarkor warriors poured in. Jack and Lyria ran to defend the throne room. There, the last line of soldiers stood ready. The king and queen were being moved to a safe bunker. Lyria took a spear and stood beside Jack. One of the commanders yelled, "Fall back!" But Jack shook his head. "We hold here. No step back, not one." The enemy came fast. The clash was fierce. Metal rang. Blasters fired. Jack fought like a storm. Lyria moved with fire in her eyes. Then a giant Zarkor warrior struck Jack hard, sending him crashing into the ground. Lyria screamed and rushed forward, her blade cutting deep into the enemy's chest. The warrior fell. She dropped beside Jack. "Jack, stay with me!" He groaned, eyes half open. "I'm not going anywhere." By dawn, the Zarkor were retreating. Their flagship had been destroyed by Virelian cannons. The people of Virelia had stood strong, humans and aliens side by side. The battle was won. In the days that followed, the palace repaired its walls. The people rebuilt what was lost. Jack recovered slowly, with Lyria always at his side. One morning, the king made an announcement. Today I declare Princess Lyria and Sir Jack Harris as the new leaders of Virelia's Peace Council. They have proven their worth not by birth but by action. The crowd cheered. Jack stood beside Lyria, holding her hand tightly. Months passed. Other planets began to change. Inspired by Virelia's story, old rules were questioned. New ideas spread. A princess who could not bear children had become the symbol of unity. A human soldier had become the heart of an alien world. Together, they showed the galaxy that love, loyalty, and courage were stronger than bloodlines or tradition. One evening, as stars twinkled above, Jack and Lyria sat in their garden. Lyria looked up. "Do you think the galaxy is really changing?" Jack smiled. "It already has." She leaned on his shoulder. "And if we had a child someday, through science or adoption, what would we tell them?" Jack thought for a moment. Then he said, "We'd tell them this. Once, a princess was cast aside, and a soldier saw her light. Together they built a new world." Lyria smiled. "A world where no one is unwanted." Jack kissed her forehead. "A world worth fighting for. And far above them, stars shined brighter than ever. A new era had begun, and it started with love."